We're going to take a look at how I like to teach the row from a position of good scapular health. Now, I'm going to preface this by a big misconception that you shouldn't round the back. Now, while the lower lumbar is supposed to be nice and stable and you shouldn't round that, there's no problem rounding the T-spine as long as you're doing it under light loading and as long as you practice that movement. I posted a video very similar to this on Instagram many years ago, and I caught massive shit for it with people saying it's gonna be a spine wrecker, blah, 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 you shouldn't row like that. If you want to keep your upper back healthy and your scapula healthy, I guarantee you that if you use this style of rowing, at least initially, and especially in GPP phases and general physical preparedness phases, it will make your back a lot more stable for a lot of other rowing, deadlifting, pull-ups, and things like that. So remember, our scapula is supposed to move around the rib cage. So we're supposed to have upward downward rotation, protraction, retraction, upward and downward scapular elevation to depression. I'm gonna show you this because I think it's really important for you to understand that you need to take care of a lot of the smaller muscles and a lot of stability muscles before we move into a lot of the bigger, heavier movements, especially if you're chasing maximal levels of strength and elite levels of strength. The most important thing is to not get injured, because if you get injured, then that's terrible for performance. So I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna row you through this. What we're gonna do is we're going to keep the lower back really strong and stable. We're gonna keep the abs really active, and we're gonna work the shoulders or the scapula through a protracted to retracted movement. So we're going to purposely, at the bottom, we're gonna purposely allow for the shoulders to come forward, and we're gonna punch our spine through. And then when we start to pull, we're going to punch the chest up, and we're gonna bring the elbows back into shoulder extension. One cue that I like to give people on a row is to forget about your hands, okay? Nothing exists beyond your elbows, okay? So the reason I give this cue is to allow them to understand that I need to drive the elbows back or out and back, depending on what we're trying to do. A lot of people will focus too much on their hands, and so they grab onto the handles, and they end up getting a lot of fatigue in their forearms before they work their back effectively, or they row and they turn this into a fantastic arm exercise, but it doesn't really help with their back development. So as we're rowing, we're thinking about driving the elbows forward, allowing the shoulders to come forward, and when we pull back, pull the shoulder back, and then driving the elbows back, okay? So, setting up, we're gonna get in a nice stable position with the lower back. We're going to let the upper back round, let the scapula come forward and stretch, and as I pull back, I'm gonna pull the shoulders back and drive the elbows back into retraction, and then come forward and let the upper back punch through. As you can see, I'm not allowing the lower back to move at all. I'm only allowing the thoracic spine to move through a completely normal range of motion, and to allow the scapula to move through the ranges of motion that they're actually designed to do. So with any type of exercise like this, where we might be using it in a general sense and or activation drill, or trying to teach the muscles to do what they're supposed to do, it's always good practice to start this really light with slow tempo, get the movement and get the technique perfect before you start to load it. Over time, when we're moving into really heavy weights, then that's probably not a good time to utilize that technique unless it's for a specific purpose. So we would keep this to strength endurance hypertrophy, maybe even a little bit of functional hypertrophy. We probably would not do this during maximal strength type of work. So if I'm taking the reps below 6 reps, I probably wouldn't use this technique. And the reason is it's going to be harder and harder to keep the lumbar spine stable and locked in that with heavy loading. So we want to make sure that we put this tool at the right time of your periodization and the right time of your program.